Inflation is crucial to determine one's purchasing power. In other words, inflation is a measure that causes the prices of both goods and services to rise over time, and buyers will feel the pinch as it affects their personal finance, particularly spending and buying habits. One way of understanding inflation is, for instance, you bought a list of household essentials last month at an expense of 1,000 Indian rupees, but this month the price of a certain food item in the same list has risen, and that has led to an increase in the cost by, let's say, 1,100 Indian rupees. You may be either forced to remove an item from your cart or buy the product that has the inflated price by paying extra, which may affect your monthly set budget. Calculate inflation rate in India. There are two indices that are used to measure inflation in India: the Consumer Price Index (CPI) and the Wholesale Price Index (WPI). These two measure inflation on a monthly basis, taking into account different approaches to calculate the change in prices of goods and services. The study helps the government and the Reserve Bank of India (RBI) to understand the price change in the market and thus keep a tab on inflation. Consumer Price Index. The CPI, which refers to the Consumer Price Index, analyzes the retail inflation of goods and services in the economy across 260 commodities. The CPI-based retail inflation considers the change in prices at which the consumers buy goods. The data is collected separately by the Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation and the Ministry of Labor. Wholesale Price Index. The WPI, which refers to the Wholesale Price Index, analyzes the inflation of only goods across 697 commodities. The WPI-based wholesale inflation considers the change in prices at which consumers buy goods at a wholesale price or in bulk from factory, mandis, etc. Average inflation rate in India. The country's retail inflation, which is measured by the Consumer Price Index (CPI), dropped to a 3-month low of 6.77% in October 2022. CPI in the month of September was 7.41% and 7% in August 2022. Meanwhile, the provisional data on Wholesale Price Index (WPI)-based inflation eased to 8.39%, from 10.7% the month before. Compared to inflation 10 years back, or in October 2012, CPI is down 2.98% and WPI is up 0.94%. The RBI has maintained its retail inflation projection at 6.7% in 2022-23, and real GDP growth projection at 7% for the same period. The central bank aims to achieve the medium-term target for CPI inflation of 4% within a band of ±2%, while supporting growth. Latest inflation news in India, November 15, 2022, CPI, WPI inflation declines, eyes on Fed's December decision. The CPI inflation has dropped to a 3-month low of 6.77% in October 2022. Whereas, WPI-based inflation rate, after remaining above 10% for the previous 1.5 years, plunged to a 19-month low of 8.39% in the same period. The RBI had estimated the country's inflation to be lower than 7% in October 2022. However, the Indian market remained largely unaffected. Stock market indices slid marginally, with the BSE S&P Sensex falling 0.28% while the Nifty 50 closed at 18,329.15, 0.11% lower for the day. Om Mehra, technical associate at Choice Broking, said he expects market indices to experience substantial volatility in the upcoming days. The performance of the upcoming sessions is probably going to remain very stock-specific. For the week, it is advisable to have a cautiously optimistic stance, he said. The RBI, while announcing the repo rate hike for the fourth time by 50 basis points to 5.9% in Sept, the central bank had blamed effects of the pandemic, the geopolitical conflict, and the weakness in the Indian rupee manifesting in the demand-supply mismatch of goods and services, leading to downside risks to growth. Inflation has found mention in the RBI's Monetary Policy Committee's reviews repeatedly as among the reasons for rate increases. To beat inflation, the government, in the past, has announced a series of measures to ease inflation: cut the excise duty on petrol and diesel, reduce import duty on key raw materials and crude edible oils, to name a few. On the other hand, one way the RBI tries to control inflation is by increasing the repo rate, the rate of interest or cost levied upon public and private banks for borrowing money from the apex bank, in order to control supply and demand of goods and services. Simultaneously, the increase in repo rates compels banks to increase interest rates on loans and deposit rates. Hence, it is important to ensure that you're financially disciplined, Not just about your spending and buying habits but about your savings and investments too. Choosing the right investment instrument is the one way to remain financially safe, which not only suits your personal finance needs given the risk you are willing to take, but also allows your savings to grow enough to beat inflation. The U.S. Federal Reserve too has maintained its position on high inflation denting the country's economic progress, and is projected to end 2022 with another sizable rate hike in December. The Fed has indicated that signs of peak inflation have arrived since hitting a 40-year high in June above 9%. Market participants expect the actual inflation to come down in the next 6 to 12 months. Bottom line, understanding your financial goals is one of the ways to beat inflation. Categorize your financial goals into long-term, 10+ years, mid-term, up to 5 years, and short-term, less than 5 years. Plan your savings and choice of saving instruments. Increase the amount of your savings as per the growth in your income. Following the suit consistently will not only help you combat inflation or meet the depreciating value of the Indian currency against the US dollar, but achieve your financial goals with an optional extra wealth accumulated over time. Please like, comment, share and subscribe for more interesting videos.